Welcome, everyone. This is Kristen Vincent, Chair of the Westborough School Committee. Today is Wednesday, December 15th, 2021. This meeting of the School Committee is called to order. Please stand if you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands.
All right, thank you for joining us this evening. Anyone attending the school committee meeting tonight is required to wear a mask. The town of Westborough has mandated face coverings effective December 1st for anyone over the age of 2 entering a municipal building, regardless of vaccination status. I'd like to notify everyone in the room with us tonight that this meeting is being recorded by Westborough TV. School committee meetings are available for remote viewing or listening on Westborough TV's government channels, Verizon 28 and Charter 192, and online on the Westborough TV YouTube channel. A recording of this meeting will be posted in the next day or so. So thank you to Westborough TV for covering the broadcast tonight, and as always. We have with us tonight Superintendent Amber Bach, Director of Finance and Administration David Gordon, Vice Chair of the Westborough School Committee Steve Jarrett, School Committee members Sarah Dulé, Lisa Edinburgh, and Raghu Nandan, our Student Representative Andrew Chen, our Recording Secretary Jen Benton, and we have staff from Westborough TV here, and we also have some invited guests in the audience tonight, and I'd like to welcome some high school students from my macroeconomics class. Our agenda for the meeting is as follows. We'll have an approval of minutes from December 1st regular session. Then we will do a recognition of Eagle Scout Liam Johnson. Then we'll have the superintendent's report, assistant superintendent's report, and, well, actually, Dr. Mayer's not here tonight, so we'll skip that, and we'll go right to the Director of Finance and Administration's report. Then we'll have school committee member reports, building project updates, citizens' requests. Then we will have a request for an approval of a trip to Costa Rica in February of 2023. We will have a COVID update, a summary and vote on the 2022-2023 school budget. We need to do a review and renewal of our medication policy. We will vote to accept a donation to the Borough program. And then we will enter an executive session, and I'm making an amendment to the agenda. We will briefly return to regular session after the executive session, and then we will adjourn. But before we begin with an approval of minutes, I would like to introduce Senator Moore, who's here tonight. I invite him up to the microphone to introduce himself, and this is our first time to have you here meeting our school committee, so welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to come tonight and introduce myself. So I am Senator Michael Moore. I represent the 2nd Worcester District, which you will be part of again starting January 2023. Currently, I represent the communities of Leicester, Auburn, Millbury, Grafton, Shrewsbury, Upton, half of Northridge, and about 35–40% of the city of Worcester. The district will be changing where Leicester will be removed from the 2nd Worcester, Upton will be gone, Northbridge will be removed, and Westborough will be added to the 2nd Worcester district. I've been in office now for 13 years, it'll be 14 starting in January. I've chaired, I think, education related. For about 6 years, I was chair of the Higher Education Committee in the Senate. One of the big initiatives that we did implement during that period of time was early college, working with the administration. They came to us when I was chair of the committee, and we implemented that, which has been a very successful program, bringing the colleges into high schools and exposing students to college curriculum and programs. It was a good way to try to incentivize students that may not think that they are college material, letting them experience college curriculum and college work, and so far it's been beneficial, and I think giving students the realization that they can do the work, and it's opening up more doors for them. I've also chaired the Committee on Public Safety, Homeland Security, Small Business Committee, and then the Municipal Government Committee. I've been on Ways and Means for 8 years. And I think my 2 biggest legislative accomplishments, the first was, I don't know if you're familiar with Nikki's Law, which is a registry database of individuals who have abused people with a developmental disability. There was a loophole in the law, and we were able to, due to a constituent who came to me whose child had been victimized, we were able to work with the Arc of Massachusetts, this constituent, and we developed this process for a registry where individuals who are terminated, they may not necessarily have been charged with a crime, which was the loophole before that. If someone did a background check, if the family or the provider or someone didn't want to go to the DA's office for prosecution, the person who committed the assault, they would be terminated, but there'd be no record of it. So when a provider tried to hire someone, they could hire the same individual who had already committed some sort of a assault or some sort of action against a child with disabilities, and they would run the criminal history check, and there'd be nothing there. So now we require providers, before they hire someone, they have to run their name, and if they terminate someone from this, they also have to submit their name to the database. And I think the other legislation that I'm proudest of is the last session we passed the sexual assault on college campuses legislation. That was something that took us 6 years to get passed. Other than that, I am from the town of Millbury, and I have 2 children. One's is a junior, halfway through her junior year at Tufts in Somerville, and my other child is a senior at Blackstone Valley Tech. And if I can answer any questions for you, I'd be more than happy to.
Does anyone have any questions for Senator Moore?
But thank you for coming to introduce it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. We look forward to working with you.
My pleasure. And if there's anything I can do, I realize that next year, between this January and next, you'll still have Senator Eldridge, but we'll be working with him on initiatives that we can help with. But please don't be afraid to call my office if you think we can be of any assistance on any matter before you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Steve?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator, one of the things that is of issue here in this town is global warming and other issues, and specifically the point I wanted to bring up was the fact that we are just about completed building a school under the MSBA. One of the things that didn't get supported by the government was the solar and geothermal parts of that project, and certainly I would personally, hopefully the school committee as well, would support the issue of having the MSBA include within their funding the evaluation of energy consumption, and therefore solar, geothermal, or any other ability to offset fossil fuels.
I thought the MSBA looked at renewable energies as part of maybe not solar or geothermal, but I thought they were...
No support. Whatever they looked at, there was no support for energy-saving concepts in terms of energy production. They certainly looked at heat loss, insulation, and that part of the construction, but not funding additional costs such as what we did here in this school system, which is net zero plus, where we'll generate more energy than we use.
Would actually be very helpful if you could email my office. I think you might have Shelley, my chief of staff. If you could email her with that issue, and I am more than happy to call over to see where it stands right now. I know you did not get it, but what the process is, or if they are looking to include that in the future.
Yeah, this school system or school building is the first one in the Commonwealth to do this, and we did it all out of our own pocket.
Okay.
And partly because it wasn't identified as something that the MSBA would support.
Yeah, and maybe I am probably wrong based on your denial of getting the reimbursement. But I thought that's how you to increase your state reimbursement from the MSBA. I thought that included meeting some of the green requirements or green initiatives.
Yeah, it does in terms of excess insulation, triple E windows, et cetera.
Okay.
And there is an evaluation of what's in the design in terms of energy efficiency, that's for sure.
Okay.
But it's only a small percent of whatever the state would offer in terms of the support. And, we're beginning to be recognized as having, stepped beyond the current bounds in regards to energy efficiency.
Okay.
But I would say from the particularly from this perspective of the state's interest in removing fossil fuels as much as possible from the mix, that certainly the Commonwealth in any form should support part of the construction costs of a facility like we just built. So hopefully, yeah,
agree.
I'd be happy to offer an email. And in fact, I know that the participants in our program, the architect as well as the owner's construction manager, has recently made presentations to the bigger community in this regard.
It'll be nice as you transition, we'll be doing, we'll do some ribbon cuttings and celebrations of the opening of that building. And I think, to Steve's point, who's the chair of that committee, as you represent Westborough, it brings a district along with you that now represents a net zero building that's really the example for other districts, and I think you'll see more funding requests for it. So you'll be able to kind of keep us company as we move forward with opening that building, and I think it'd be great to give you a tour at some point and let you see it so that you can share kind of the good news of what that looks like with others.
Okay, thank you. No, I'd love to come out and see it if I could. Just on the, because you brought up renewable energy, talking about climate change. Previously, I started my work career with the State Environmental Police. I was with them for 22 years. I worked out of the Attorney General's office, and there were 4 of us, and we investigated environmental crimes that had a criminal penalty. So we did illegal disposal of hazardous waste, solid waste, medical waste, wetland violations. So anything that had a criminal penalty, we did the criminal investigations for the Attorney General's office. And then I spent 4 years at the Sheriff's office overseeing re-entry programs for inmates that were going out in the street, being released. So, but if you can email that to me, that would be great, and we will gladly look into it to see how helpful we can be.
That's great. It's really, I'm just suggesting the focus, that focus for the MSBA would be an important thing, and obviously the MSBA reacts to what the legislature would suggest.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised where there's such an effort being made to reduce carbon emissions that there was no reimbursement. Maybe you were the first school that actually, or school district to put in for that sort of reimbursement. I don't know, but we can try to find out for you.
Yeah, our issues associated with the approval was 3 years ago. So what MSBA is doing now is just recognizing the fact that there is a need. But clearly it has to be supported at the legislative level in terms of, we know that they only get 1 penny out of this 6.25% taxes in terms of their budget. And now that cities are building relatively super expensive schools like Worcester and Lawrence, the $200 million, $300, $400 million investments, that anything that benefits, I think, overall in terms of the cost of schools, which this will, it'll reduce our energy bill almost to nothing.
Yeah, and there may be reasons why MSBA doesn't want to fund that aspect of it. I don't know. You are the first one to actually bring that up to me, so that's why I'm more than happy to look into it, just for future knowledge for other communities too.
I'm sure in the district you'll hear others that are doing the same thing and be talking to you very soon. But at any rate, given the opportunity to ring this bell, I felt that you might be interested in hearing it. So thank you.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, especially with the governor having signed the climate action plan to reduce the greenhouse gases by 2030.
Yep.
This goes along. It supports the initiative by the state. So school buildings are one of the largest consumers of energy in any town or municipality, and supporting this initiative really helps.
Well, and that's why I was kind of surprised that it's not included in the funding. I could possibly understand some of the geothermal, because I think that's more expensive with the excavation and how far you have to go. But the solar, I'm surprised at. So
the new mass save initiative does support geothermal.
Yep.
They're changing the mass save. It does include geothermal.
I haven't heard of any school. I haven't heard of a school district that actually has utilized geothermal or actually even solar. The only ones I know who utilize solar is actually Blackstone Valley Tech. They have solar panels on their roof. And I think we all know what they say about assuming, and I kind of just assumed that may have come from the MSBA, some funding there. So,
Yeah, we'll give you a tour. We actually have 2 schools that are geothermal. So I think in terms of being able to provide data and some leadership around that work, as you look at the MSBA funding to support the larger goals that they're talking about, it will be a nice opportunity for us to show you what we've done.
great.
One of the reasons why the town stepped up out of pocket to do this is because of the other school that we have that is geothermal, and we could prove the advantage to the taxpayer of investing the money now to get the benefit of both systems.
Okay.
So, it's probably not as easy in other towns where you don't have an example that you could use to do the cost-benefit analysis of the decision, which we did. I mean,
Okay.
And how we got it in the first place was I believe it was in the early 90s, Mass Electric basically gave it to us.
Oh, okay.
So it was pretty easy to accept it.
Those are nice things you like to accept.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much, and we'll
thank
be in
you.
touch, and we hope to see you over the course of the year, and
Yeah,
Thank
again,
you again for
anytime I
coming.
can be of any assistance, please feel free to reach out to us,
Thank
to my
you.
office, and I'm more than happy to come out and see what we can try to do to help.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Luck with your other issues on the
Yeah.
agenda tonight. I know a lot of school committees have been dealing with a lot of issues that have been misrepresented, and I think we all know that social media actually puts out a lot of misinformation that isn't actually factual. So I've had a lot of communities where the school committees, there's been attempts to recall them.
We're doing well. We're all right.
Doing well. We're a very strong group here,
But
so
everyone, that's right.
So good luck with that,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you so
and hope you have a nice Christmas.
Thank you. Happy New
Thank
Year.
you.
Thank you so
Thank
much. Thanks.
Very nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good to see you again. Good to see you. Yeah, take care.
All right, and so we're going to skip around a little bit more, and Liam Johnson has been here sitting with his family, patiently waiting to be recognized as an Eagle Scout. So Liam, I would love to invite you to come on up and just sit at the table for a minute, and we can recognize you and your project.
So
Yep.
definitely a chance to really showcase when we have an Eagle in town and our scouting programs across the community that contribute so many really meaningful projects. You know that the sustained work for a lot of our outdoor trails and community work, and Liam's project is quite impressive in that and I'll let him speak to it. I'll give the summary and then you can ask him questions. I'll try to save you from having to do too much legwork on it. Liam worked over at Chauncey area along the lakefront and built a gazebo, a resting place for people to reflect and do senior photos and all the fun stuff. It's a really beautiful site. And he also incorporated, which I think is a particularly interesting part, commemoration around recognizing the role of the state hospital property for care and compassion of the mentally ill. And I think really did some historical work to acknowledge the property as well. So it's both a learning space as well as, an opportunity to enjoy the beauty of the area. And I certainly had an opportunity to hear Liam speak about it recently and the role scouting's played in his life at the Good Scout Award ceremony, where we honored 2 very nice people that he knows well, his mom and dad, actually. And so I would just want to congratulate Liam for really representing both an exemplary Westborough High School student and community member, and thank him for his work, and let you ask him questions where you can grill him and he can tell you about his project.
So it's a beautiful project. It's something that definitely stands out, as all the Eagle projects are. They definitely contribute to Westborough being, a better place in terms of improving something around town. And so where did you come up with the idea for building a gazebo there?
So I did have a little bit of help, some motivation from my parents very early on. spent a lot of time working with Mr. Earl Story in town, because obviously there was a lot of stuff with like planning and if I could use the land or not. Had to go in front of a couple boards to get approval. But since the state hospital building was recently torn down, I figured it'd be important to commemorate the history in a certain way. And as I started to research, I found a lot more about the Reform School as well. So I thought that was important to include. And overall, it was just a way to help people in the town remember what was there for future generations. Because I think a lot of people look over that it was there at one point, and now it's just the housing system over there. Just want to make sure that people can see pictures, learn about the history, and just relax near the shores of Chauncey.
Yeah, nice.
Very nice.
Sarah?
Where, do you want to just tell us about some of the pictures that are there and, you know, where you got them from?
Yeah, so I did some work with Mr. Vaver at the library. He showed me some books, and they have a ton of resources over there that are open to the public if anybody's interested. And I also spent some time with Mr. Kittredge in town because he does a lot of work with old photographs, and he edits them and everything. So he helped me. I spent a couple evenings working with his collections to find pictures that I thought would represent the hospital and some of the other parts of the State Reform School in the best manner, although some of the pictures of the original State Reform School were very old because it was way back.
Yeah.
It was over 100 years ago that it was there. So I found some maps, I found some pictures of the state hospital, only a couple of the Reform School, and then I included pictures of Dr. Solomon Carter Fuller as well, because that was a really important part of the hospital. So I picked as many photos as I could to represent what the property looked like then, and different and unique parts of it to show people what used to be there is obviously no longer there.
I think it was perfect timing for a project like that too, considering, you know, the landscape over there has really changed.
How long did it take?
Took me longer than expected. I intended to do it in 2019, and I started planning, got approvals, and then COVID came around, and the whole idea with the project was to lead others in building it and helping out in that way, and obviously that didn't go so well. The goal was to do it in the spring of 2020, but instead I more focused on some research, and I was able to finish up most of the building late last year, then early this year.
Nice.
It definitely was a lot of steps through it.
Yeah.
And it took, the research especially took a while. But, so it took around 2 years, but just a little elongated.
Yep.
Liam, did you use a local contractor? Who did you work with? Like, just to recognize the amount of people that, it really is such a coordination process to manage others, and I think that's a big learning of the Eagle Project. How did you leverage the construction people?
So after working with Mr. Story, we found a construction company, DPR Construction, and they were working on a project in town, and they volunteered to help both with the actual construction, as I had to meet a ton of regulations that me as a 17-year-old could not assure the town of. And obviously we didn't exactly know how to use all the equipment. And they helped with getting materials, and they actually volunteered their time to help us out, and sent a couple guys over just to make sure everything was done and that it's safe for everybody to use.
Great, that's great. I think it's good just to recognize the amount of commitment that goes on in the community. So one of the things that we do, this is a ritual that we enjoy actually, this is the photo op, so that when you actually go to your January ceremony, you can have a photo of this moment. Typically what we do is we recognize with a certificate of achievement. One of the things that they do in the Eagle Scout celebrations, there is a formal ceremony where they get an opportunity to then showcase things about the project with photos, and it gives them a chance to look at other recognitions. So we have a crisp little certificate here for your scrapbook. And then typically we ask the school committee to come around and we'll do a photo with you. So why don't we do that now? You're gonna do this too. This is the photo op. Congratulations. And I think it's going to last. All right, let's go in front of this. We'll hand you the certificate, and we'll create a scrunch in here so that we actually. We're gonna do one mask. We're gonna do one mask and one unmasked. Do your mask. Like ritual, we all know well. Perfect. Congratulations, Leo.
Congratulations, Leo. Good job.
Yeah, it's a really nice project.
Good job. I know, I've seen many people lounging in there.
I know. I think the number of senior pictures going on is the most unique project. Thank you very much. So good. All right. I'm gonna
Great,
close
thank
this
you.
one.
So we're rolling right along. We also need to approve our minutes. So we're going to approve our minutes from December 1st, regular session.
So move.
Second that.
Thank you. I have a couple of quick, just little teeny amendments to the minutes, so we'll be approving some amended minutes. So the last person who spoke at citizens' request, her name is Diane McPherson, McPherson. And then on the second page, under the motion, it was actually Sarah who seconded the motion. I think you listed me as seconding it, but it was Sarah who seconded the motion. I think that's it. Any other discussion or amendments to the minutes? All right, all in favor of approving them?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That's 5-0. Those are approved. So I'm going to turn it back over to the superintendent. If you have any, I know you're sharing a lot during this meeting, but if you have anything
Oh, thank
to
you.
share
No,
now.
that's good. I amended a couple things out of my report to keep it tight, but I do have one or two important updates. I wanted to, you already said Dana wasn't going to be here. He'll be back next week. I wanted to provide an update for you tonight on the timeline for the strategic plan. We've been working forward on the timeline, so I just wanted to step you through it. I've got a slide here you can review. So we've continued to make adjustments to the timeline to make sure that the strategic plan can come forward, and that's the next 5-year plan, with this year being an active, engaged year of goals. So currently, we worked on it through the summer. We had work that we did at retreat with the leadership team. Implementation of the year has, stalled aspects of that work as we're pacing through what it takes to get everybody back to some important baselines. We have, this week, we've been working on pushing through a review of notes, and we had a working group finalizing parts of the draft for the day on Friday. I'm continuing to work on it this week to pull in notes from the different working groups that reviewed it this summer. So, it's a complex process of layering in different opinions, feedback, ideas, continuing to review concepts to make sure that the strategic plan represents meaningful and important goals for the district for the next 5 years. I anticipate Friday pushing kind of a working final draft out to student service coordinators, curriculum coordinators, and WLT, with some space for them to begin adding comments, and they'll go back in and provide another layer of feedback. From there, I would imagine, I would hope to also share it out to faculty, probably Friday, just so they've, or Monday, depending on the timeline of my work this week. I want them to see it. I don't want them to have to do anything with it right now, but we want to put it back on radar with a letter from us and from myself, reminding them of kind of the journey of some of that work, and that we want them to know that it's coming back onto the front burner for them, and that in January they would have time to be working on it. But I don't want it to be like the first time they hear about it when they return. So we'll push that out as a kind of reminder notice, but just really a mental agenda for people. We're not giving workload this time of year. We're just trying to kind of step through where we are. 1-5, I've got myself slotted to bring you back an update of that preliminary working draft, more complete with all the feedback we've been talking about right now. moving towards a final plan presented after it has time to circulate through some different groups and out to parents, and probably a loop for students and parents to interact on it and give us additional feedback. Then it would come to you for a final vote of approval in February. So that's the adjusted timeline. I think, you know, the goals that we have for year one are moving forward strategically. I don't feel that we're in a stalemate by taking some additional time on the document to make sure that it's working and available to provide the robust set of goals that it needs to. So that's the timeline as of now. I can email this to you. It's just a working draft, but it's the dates that I mapped out with WLT at our last meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. Are there any questions about the timeline?
Right. You'll have lots of time to look at it yourself, and I think you'll see that we've updated, and you saw originally the framework of that document so that it's more interactive, and I think we have some new ideas, even more about how to make it a repository for a lot of the feedback loops and documentation that represent the goals of the different pieces of the plan. I think that's exciting. We look forward to putting that back in front of you. So that's my update for tonight.
Thank you. Dave, I know, again, you'll be sharing a lot later, but any updates now?
Sure, just a couple quick ones. Still working with Transportation NRT, the potential for 2 possible additional drivers in the next couple weeks. So what we're doing essentially right now is kind of assessing the current routes and, you know, making some determination factors as to suitability, just complacency, things of that nature, as opposed to opportunity to be more efficient. So we're really going to spend some time with NRT assessing any students that have been impacted, and if in fact there's opportunity for us to kind of more streamline and make sure that arrivals to pickups are more aligned with what we've, you know, promised the community. So we're working on that, but that's promising. In fact, they've potential to have 2 additional drivers, and whether they are opportunities to be more efficient or subs, it'll be good, post holidays, it's always good. And I know NRT is suffering a little bit with absences and things of that nature. So either way, it's a win-win. So we'll just determine which is the best way to use them going forward. The other update is quickly just to talk about the budget process and where I'm at. Continuing to work with Superintendent Bach on things, but additionally setting up any analytics or any kind of additional benchmarking data or anything that's necessary for future meetings. Additionally, preparing the budget book, chart of accounts, and just preparing for kind of next step within the budget process. So there's, it's a busy office, but again, things right now are going pretty smoothly.
Good, thank you for the update.
Yep.
Great. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew. Do you have some updates from the schools?
Yeah, so I have a few updates. So the second graders at Hastings are heading over to the Highlands to sing songs and deliver cards to spread some holiday cheer.
So nice.
The rest of the school is also collecting food for the Westborough Food Pantry. The Best Buddies at the high school have also had a canned food drive the past week. So tomorrow morning at the high school will be the first round table meeting, which will be, it's organized by the student council, and it will be a gathering of all the student leaders around the high school, like club leaders, all these people to talk about school policy, how to make the school a better place, and all that. Last Friday was also the hypnotist show, which is a lot of fun. I was there. I know some of the seniors in the audience were also there. It was a very fun time watching our fellow seniors do some wacky things. Also a note, because it was indoors and there was a lot of people in close proximity, masks were required for everyone. Speaking about masks, a quick update. So for those of you in the audience and watching at home, last Monday was when we switched to flexible masking at the Gibbons and the high school. From personal experience, from what I've seen, the majority of students have still chosen to remain masked. And the times where the most students are unmasked and close proximity still remain to be like during mask breaks and during lunches. And yeah, there has also been general respect and understanding between students for students who choose to remain masked and who choose to remain unmasked. So that's also a good thing. And yeah, that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for the update. Sarah?
I just had really quick, there is a 9th grade planning meeting tonight for the class of 2025, and just wanted to put that on people's radars if they didn't know, because it is a good time. It's live at 7, which is soon, but if you can't make it, it's going to be on the Westborough High School Counselors YouTube channel, and that's just a good tool for freshmen or sophomores to, get used to using the guidance website, because there's a lot of information there, and for parents to put a face with a name with the guidance counselors earlier rather than later, as Andrew and these gentlemen can tell you, later on you really rely on them. So it's good to build relationships early. So if you miss that, you can catch it on the High School Counselors YouTube channel. And just another plug for all the concerts going on, everyone singing and playing music, and that's all on Westborough TV. So if you're sitting home and you want to watch a show, you can certainly find someone performing on Westborough TV. So it's just a really nice time of year for that. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Raghu, do you have any updates?
Yeah, one update, Sustainability Westborough has a thought to write with students' help, of course, to write a white paper on the economics behind the putting a heat pump at fail. So we geothermal and use geothermal energy at fail. So that effort, there's been some discussion, so that effort will need students and maybe some experts in the field to help us do that.
Lisa?
Yeah. So I just wanted to say a few words. Our committee's discussion around COVID-19 policies are understandably an important and emotional issue for our community. And while our discussions were held in open meetings, many assumptions, suppositions, and accusations have been made. This is unfortunate in that many of these messages, when focused on differing opinions, assume malicious intent. For the purpose of transparency, I have compiled a timeline of events, actions, and decisions that I hope will provide clarifications for those wondering about the process. I am submitting a detailed timeline to be included in the posted minutes for tonight's meeting. I have sent them to Jen Benton. Rather than taking the time to rehash all of the details, I will focus on a few critical points. The welfare and education of our students is my first and foremost priority. Our discussions about masking policies as they related to our layered COVID protections began in August. State mandates changed our plans, but the school committee has been committed to striking the right balance between physical and mental health needs. We want our students to have the best possible learning environment and experience without unreasonable risk. This has guided our process and decisions I've made. The school committee listened and responded to the concerns of teachers. This is not caving to the union. This is recognizing the added challenges and stress related to teaching in the current environment. Considering the needs of faculty and staff makes sense, as we do not want to lose our quality educators who work very hard daily, and we thank them for that. At our November 2nd meeting, the school committee postponed action on the December 6th target date for flexible masking, specifically to provide teachers and administrators time to prepare for the change. Teachers wanted to wait for their boosters. The school committee waited. Prior to that November 2nd meeting, it was decided that teachers would not be burdened with becoming mask police, and also immunocompromised teachers and students would have fully masked classrooms to protect the more vulnerable population. Note that these decisions differ from how other districts moved to flexible masking. It was a thoughtful process. The school committee listened to the guidance from the Westborough Board of Health. On August 10th, the Board of Health recommended not unmasking vaccinated teachers until masked unvaccinated students were eligible for vaccinations. Therefore, the discussion for the school committee turned to only Gibbons and the high school. October 27th, the Board of Health offered much guidance to the school committee. Each case should be examined closely, we were told. This happens regularly between the Director of Public Health, She is the director, the Board of Health's director, the lead nurse, Judy Noonan, and Amber Bach. Additionally, since masks were a safety layer, another layer should be added. They had given us guidance. As part of that implementation, mandated masked classrooms were added to the safety layers, as well as symptomatic test and stay. They told us that teachers should really get their boosters first. That's what they told us that day. School committee waited for this. They also suggested weighing the benefits of flexible masking with the physical risk that was relayed to us. A mention of the incremental safety of masking versus vaccinations was discussed. The school committee listened and did this. We asked for metrics, which were not and have not been provided. While the Board of Health members expressed reservations and concerns, they decided not to vote a recommendation for or against flexible masking. At their November 15th meeting, the Board of Health reached concurrence that if the schools were proceeding with flexible masking, the policy should not change until 1 week after Thanksgiving break, which is December 6th. At the November 17th school committee meeting, Superintendent Bach proposed a new date of January 10th. This was discussed but not acted upon because there did not appear a consensus to make this change. Unfortunately, subsequent communications gave the impression to faculty, staff, and the community that January 10th had been decided upon. At our December 1st meeting, the school committee voted to proceed with the December 6th initiation of flexible masking. If anyone was interested in the detailed timeline, it will be posted in the December 15th school committee meeting minutes. And I really have just done that for transparency, because as people have often said to me, I do not have time to watch all of the school committee meetings. I do not have time to watch all of the Board of Health meetings. So I thought it would be best to sort of break it out, because it really was quite a process. It was not done overnight.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Steve, I don't have any reports tonight, so if you want to move into your building project updates, we can do that.
Okay.
Okay, and just make sure you're close to the microphone so everyone at home can hear you.
Well, as we've talked about before in regards to fails, that the building is occupied and has been for a few weeks now, and the kids are in there, and as we go forward with some of the final pieces within the building, completing punch list items, that being things that didn't work quite the way we wanted them to, and therefore they need to be repaired, fixed, changed, or whatever. That process goes on. Some of us had the opportunity to see the murals that were finally put on the walls during the week. It's absolutely fabulous, and when you get a chance to get inside the building on your own, you'll see what we mean. But more importantly, things that are important, and I spoke to the geothermal and the solar projects that are embedded in the school system. The solar project was commissioned last week, about a week ago, actually, and I can report on its initial generation. In that period of time, from then to now, the system, which is a 400 kilowatt facility, generated 13.5 megawatt hours. That's 1,000 kilowatts. That is comparable to, say, a homeowner's electric bill, roughly 500 kilowatt hours. That means 27 houses would have been powered by that system in 1 week. And in fact, we are hopeful that, and the design was such that we set the panel angles to this time of the year in terms of where the sun's angle is, so that it maximizes generation in this period of the year rather than in the summer when we don't need it as much. And I'm quite happy about those results. Also, we moved the camera that was taking a picture of the construction of the new school to the new school roof, and it now points in the direction of where the old school is. And therefore, very quickly, you'll see that the old school will disappear probably within the next month. The demolition has started in the old school building. It's now off limits to anybody now. It's in the control of the contractor. Many of the windows are gone. We did not find any any surprises relative to asbestos in the building. It all had been removed historically. There were some issues about asbestos being used in the adhesives that stuck the whiteboards on the wall, but it turned out that there wasn't any additional asbestos in the building. And so you'll be able to watch the demolition of the old school via the ox-blue camera that's on the roof, and I think access to it has been on the school website. So these good things, I guess, are finally coming to pass after an awful lot of labor and concern by many, many people on this project. And I'm hopeful that all the rest of the systems continue to come online as they're supposed to. So that's my story. The other projects are moving ahead. The sprinkler system at Hastings, the HVAC design for Hastings, and exactly what's now on the town warrant this year in terms of those other projects, I'm not sure based on what the outcome of the budget meeting with the Board of Selectmen last night. Yeah. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, Steve. I wanted to know if any of the high schoolers here went to Fails. Did anybody go to Fails? Andrew, did you go to Fails?
I did not. I went
No.
to Hastings.
Oh, okay.
I heard the murals are beautiful.
Yeah.
It's pretty
really
impressive,
Is any
yeah.
of the other, like hedgehog-y stuff or any of that stuff being moved over?
Oh, my gosh, no, they brought over the original, one of the original in the cafeteria.
Oh, the picture
that-
of Annie Fails?
She's gonna put it, oh, we have the picture of Annie Fails, yeah. But she saved one of the murals to bring over, but the new murals are beautiful.
Oh, yeah, the one in the
And they
cafeteria.
showcase Annie, so,
Yeah, I know, there's little Annie
That's
hedgehogs
pretty-
and all the different.
yeah, I'm
It's
interested
like,
in.
Where's Waldo?
Yeah. I'm interested in looking at working collaboratively with the other two elementary schools to see if they're interested in doing versions of murals and would bring a continuity to the three schools, to have kind of a similar impact type mural themes in the other two buildings. If they're interested, we'd have to work forward on that with some PGA fundraising and stuff. But I think it would be neat to have as a cohesive kind of shared visual across the schools, which would be nice.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And just one other point, there are two cornerstones on the school with the original construction and then the one for the addition. Both of those are being saved. So they will show up on the site somewhere when we get it all figured out.
Oh, that's great. That's nice. Thank you. We can move on to citizens' requests. If there's anyone here tonight that wishes to make a statement to the school committee. This is a time for citizens' requests if you'd like to come forward and address the school committee. Sure. So just as a reminder, you can have 3 minutes to address the board, and it's not a time for us to get into a discussion, but you're welcome to share your thoughts with us, and you can just state your name and street address.
Boyd Conklin, 8 Water Street.
Go for it.
So I talked to you guys last meeting on December 1st about the ESSER grant and the 20% that goes to what the federal government wants you to put it towards, and so I'm trying to get a hold of that curriculum. I sent you guys all an email up here, and then also sent Daniel one too. I guess he's the contact for the curriculum, so I'm still trying to get that. As far as the critical race theory, also known as social emotional learning, that I'm trying to get a hold of. And then also in the board meeting last time, I noticed that everybody seemed to be pro-vaccine, even the people that were anti-mask. And so from what I've seen, what I'm reading is that 1 in 2,700, this is Japanese data, for the adolescents is coming down with the myocarditis, pericarditis, and I guess the lifespan after adolescent gets that is the median lifespan is 5 years. So I'm for not pushing the vaccine at all. I mean, if people want it, that's fine, but I think the risk of death for an adolescent is about 40 times higher from the vaccine than what they would face from getting the disease, whatever. And also I would note that this new Xi variant, which is called Omicron, doesn't seem to be very lethal at all, and also that the vaccines aren't effective against it whatsoever, it seems. I think my 3 minutes is up. Thanks.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Anyone else for citizens' requests? All right, thank you. We will move on to our next agenda item, which is something we have not had for a while on our school committee agenda, which is requests for approval for a trip
it's very
to Costa
exciting.
Rica in 2023.
So I am presenting to you on behalf of the high school and Jeannie LaPlatney a return to the Costa Rica trip. This is the trip where they go to the Galapagos. It's a well-framed Westborough trip that my daughter went on and endless other Westborough high school students. Typically the group ranges from 20 to up to almost 30 students. It has a robust set of teacher chaperones. It uses a 1:8 ratio to chaperone. It has a variety of both travel that looks at cultural travel, but then also all the science connections of the Galapagos, and it's quite a robust trip. This is looking to implement February vacation of 2023, so you're looking well over a year and a half out, but a chance for us to go ahead and book the trip and start to look at the potentials and get a sense from high school students and families if they are interested in a return to travel. So I think they're recommending that what we would do is move forward. We can't, again, until we get an approval, market the trip and be able to ask students for information around interest and see, the kind of planning that has to take place. I have a lot of confidence in this trip as it's well mapped and well run in terms of the experiences, and I certainly am in favor of approving having you move it forward. I would think that we would monitor that, and I can provide updates to you. I mean, obviously, all travel and different things are going to be weighted against trajectory of any COVID-based, issues. So at this point, I would say you could approve the trip, and they'll be working to see what the interest is. So very preliminary, but certainly they need to book in and make sure that they're on the list.
Sure.
Questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So is this the same company we had used in the past?
Yes.
And last time when the trip was canceled, they did not, if I hear it right, they did not credit the amount back. They just gave an alternative dates for taking a trip, and it really affected the seniors who were going to move out of.
Right. So typically, they do a trip credit, and that's in their detailed writing to everyone who signs on, and they recognize that that's the deal in terms of that plan. It's certainly not a good situation. We certainly did what we could to mitigate that, but that is the agreement you make when you come into that type of planned trip. They do honor that travel and provide opportunities for flexible international travel, and they do honor those waivers to reuse the travel expenditure. And I think they provide a set of robust trips. And while it's not the same trip, people do then have the opportunity to travel and add into one of their other experiences. So while not ideal, I acknowledge, yes, it definitely was problematic for seniors who ended up then getting basically a travel credit to use EF tours, but it wouldn't be with Westborough, it would be an independent trip. And I think certainly we can reemphasize, and I think we should with families, the risks of that and look at the travel potentials. And I think certainly people are going to be particularly cautious of that, but we can certainly make sure we're overly transparent about it as people sign up.
Yeah, was there any attempt to negotiate something else with the company?
I mean, EF is a very well-established, strong organization, and just as you look at like what we had to do with transportation, I mean, all of these companies are trying to survive and manage the risks of the costs that they incur to book these types of, I mean, they had all their hotel reservations, flight reservations, all of those types of incurred costs are also, you know, again, financial impact for companies, but in this case, it certainly was never an experience we had had before, and hopefully not again.
All right, as long as the families know
Yeah,
the risks behind it.
sure.
Yeah.
I'll definitely follow up with Brian and the team. Other questions?
Other questions?
No, I think it's Costa Rica.
It is.
It is, it's Costa Rica, but they go to Galapagos as well. They've got a series of locations that they travel to.
So I did look up, I dug a little bit into EF Tours and what their policy is around COVID. Because I was, you know, this is a year and a third out, don't know where we're going to be. But the one thing that was interesting to me is that they actually have like COVID impact if you're on the trip, where they would, you know, medical needs, fly you home at no additional cost, which, I mean, it sounds sort of callous to think that they wouldn't, but I mean, I was looking for ways that they might deal with it, which sounds, the fact that it's all part of it, but it also was the insurance that is, you, I think, are required to purchase. And the one concern I had was that the expiration of the voucher is for 2023. I suspect that would be an incorrect date for the expiration of the voucher, since this is in 2023. But I would, you know, maybe have Jeannie LaPlatney ask that question. And by the way, I hold her in very high regard. She's an extraordinary Spanish teacher and in our Westborough High School. And, you know, it's, I think this is, there have been many, many EF trips that have been very, very successful in all parts. And the question is, when do we move forward with those? And obviously, a year from now, we don't know what that will look like. So I guess it is the cautionary tale. And the other question I had was that on the sheet that we received about the tour price quote, it says that the lowest price expired November 30th. Does that mean that people already signed up?
No. This is,
I didn't think
she provided the estimate from the last time of travel. She'll have to renegotiate after, she has to get really, it's very preliminary. She'll have to put out and get interest. And so she's showing you the, you know, the general, she got the estimates, but again, she'll have to go back and get them to restate it based upon her numbers, based upon current travel costs. So I think she did her preliminary check with them and they gave her an estimate. But again, she'll have to get, before kids sign up, she'll probably, like, you're gonna approve it. She'll probably call, refix her estimate, make sure it's fixed, and update her documents to make sure she can be clear with them what the costs are. It falls in about the average range of the cost of the trips. I'm surprised it hasn't gotten more expensive, but we'll see. I mean, she'll have to call and get a new estimate, but at this point, I feel like I'd like to let her move forward, and I'll take back notes on insurance, expiration of the voucher, update of cost estimate, and a double statement on transparency of loss of travel. You know, you don't get a refund.
And so,
One of the things that might be negotiated is the transferability of a voucher. In other words, if, say, a future trip and a senior isn't going anywhere, that they could sell their voucher to somebody taking a new trip.
I can ask. I mean, I think we did some of that work when we were negotiating with them last year, but I don't want to speak on behalf of what they did. So I have some keynotes, again, typical to a return to trips. These are all things that she's experienced traveler from other districts she's worked in, and we're pleased to see her stepping forward to begin anchoring some of our trips.
and I see it's a language immersion. I know she's a Spanish teacher, so is there, if there's a lot of interest in a trip like this, is there a priority given to students in Spanish classes at the high school, or is it just kind of open to everyone?
They're always open, but
Yeah.
again, I think natural interest kind of drives, people in class who might feel like that's an immersion and experience while they have the teacher, or they're in that level of coursework. So there's usually a good mix.
Okay, great.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2023 trip to Costa Rica.
Thank you, Sarah.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Raghu. Any other discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? No opposition? All right, so that's approved, and I'm glad that she's able to move forward with this and start planning and gathering some lists of interested students and families, so that's great. Thank you.
I agree. So I'm gonna.
And I'm glad to see that EF Tours survived COVID. I was a
Yeah,
little
I
worried
was a little
when
worried
their
too.
entire industry shut down. And I'm glad to see that they're back and
I'll
able to
send you
offer
an
trips.
update. I'm gonna follow up with her and with Brian to make sure that their notes on these are clear, and I'll make sure I follow up at our next meeting and give you an updated report.
Yeah, thanks.
We've been holding this one a while, and I think she brought it over, and I want to make sure that we get the updates you need.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
But we'd like her to move forward with
Yep.
that, so.
All right,
great.
that'll be good news.
Okay, so we are moving on in our agenda, right on time, to our COVID update. I know you have some updated numbers for
I
us.
do. I think, while I don't tend to do a lot around working numbers, because we post that weekly, I just call people's attention to it, as you can use this as the weekly benchmark we use to provide updates to the community on COVID numbers across district, as well as close contacts that are being tracked. So I think for me tonight, and you can see this will be updated again at the end of this week. So this is not current for this week. I checked with Brian Callahan today, because we haven't had a shift in cases at Gibbons, but we have, and I got his current update, we have 6 current active cases at the high school. I think the information that was circulating today was around the impact of close contacts. So, you have a large number of close contacts. That would occur regardless of masked or unmasked, but we are tracing to 6 feet right now because the flex masking is available. So you're going to have more people in the peripheral of that impact. And today they were making calls on those close contacts. I think 6 is the number where we were before, but I think it feels like a much larger impact. We faced some of that when we were at Fails, where it felt like there were a lot of calls going out because there were different students in different classes, and we were doing test and stay for the whole class. So you're calling 60 people and telling them that they need to do test and stay. And so I think from that standpoint, the impact feels similar to when we were doing a lot of active calls at Fails. Similarly at the high school, you just don't have too many little guys texting about it when you call a second grader. when you close contact a high schooler, everyone knows immediately, as does their family. And so I think, I don't mean to be, humorous about it. It's upsetting when you get a call that you're a close contact. I certainly took calls today from some families who felt that, and some emails that felt that it's upsetting that they were identified as a close contact coming into the holidays. That's been true for us for a while. Again, I think we all feel the stress of that transition being a more activated set of feelings, and I think that's just the truth of where we are. So again, the number is one that 6 is a number that we're tracking. There are 2 cases that look like they are in-school transmission from one of the cases that was current. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but, again, we'll follow up and track this and interact with the Board of Health and make sure that they are feeling confident about our implementation. So I think the other important update that I wanted to provide tonight was more focused on how we'll manage vacation. And I want to be clear that one of our target goals is to allow our nursing staff and our admin team and our teachers to have vacation. So the call process for being a close contact will be automated only. and there will be an in-depth translated email that directs you to call your family physician or the Board of Health if you have any confusion around the detailed notes that are provided to you in the email. That currently is the practice we are using, so it's not a giant change, but typically I've been at the school when they push send on that and the phone starts ringing. So people's first instinctual kind of, they get the call, and they don't even read their email, they just call the school. Or even after they read their email, they call the school. That's certainly understandable, but it is a habit that I want to be transparent about here, that I believe that at this stage in living within COVID, people need to understand what are the parameters when you're a close contact. You need to read the email. You need to understand how to act within that framework. I spoke with a parent today. I said, we're living in a world where everybody's kind of monitoring themselves as a potential close contact for symptoms all the time. So people need to make themselves aware. And while we want, if you have a genuine question, that you need to ask the nursing staff that we're available, that will not be possible during vacation. So I will be taking point on interacting with the Board of Health. They will contact me. We will be putting out a communication probably Monday that will be clear to families that if they have a COVID case in one of their children, they can email the principal or they can contact the Board of Health, and we will follow up with the contact tracing and push a phone message and an email. I think that will work effectively and also work effectively to make sure that we're not having to interrupt faculty who are taking some downtime if they need to or are traveling. So I feel like that will be effective. We will be contact tracing the 24th and the 25th. So you're going 2 days back. So after that, the following week, we won't be making calls because we won't be in session. We will be following up with the Board of Health, and they'll give us an update of any cases prior to return, so we know students that will be out. So that's, I think a procedural piece. I'm meeting tomorrow with principals. We're going to go through that procedure again. Judy Noonan has done a really amazing job to kind of lay out clear communications for us to use. And I will be coordinating that, and then we'll do a couple pushes of communications to family probably Monday. Better than Friday, probably Monday's a better day. So that'll be the trajectory of communications. And I have some FAQ updates that I will add as well, but I'd like to do it as one push and then just replicate sending it twice or just kind of reminding people. So that's the trajectory of planning as it stands now. I think it's fairly standardized, and it's just a matter of keeping our implementation as clean as possible. So that's my update for our work to manage COVID for tonight.
All right, I just have I'm glad you clarified, because I was wondering why we would have to contact trace over break, but it would just be those first couple days for any exposure that could have possibly happened at the end of
Thursday,
Wednesday or Thursday of the last week. Yep. Thank you. And then also as someone who has multiple children at the school, when you get an email or the communication, it does tell you, it doesn't say the name of the child, just sort of, when you're thinking this through. So generally you have to email the nursing staff, and then they will tell you which child it is. So I don't know, for those 2 days, if there's a way to let people know which child it is so they don't have to circle back and try to figure it out. Or as you said, we're all close contacts anyway, so.
Okay, thank you.
I'll roll with it.
Yeah.
Your whole family is on quarantine anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Continually close contact.
At least the grade, because the automated.
Or maybe the
email-
grade.
The
you're
grade
right,
would be helpful.
Yeah.
Email may not be. able
Unless you have
to-
twins.
Yeah. Then
Yep.
both.
Anyway, we're all close contacts, but.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Any other questions? All right,
All
thank
right,
you.
thank you.
Okay, you want me to keep steaming forward? I'm driving tonight here with the budget.
Yeah, the next agenda item is the summary and vote on the 2022-2023 proposed school budget. And just as a recap, we have heard budget presentations at each of our meetings since October. And in our last meeting on December 1st, we looked at the final recommended budget from the superintendent and our our director of finance and administration. And we also had a public hearing about the budget on December 1st. So we are here for our vote tonight.
All right, thank you. So David and I have been continuing to work on this. I think by process, you'll see that this is budget presentation 4 from December 1st. So I'm going to work off of the original presentation, and I'm going to step you through some highlights and then just make a final recommendation around kind of the trajectory of what I think will be important for us to think about as a school community and as a school committee as we move forward towards town meeting in March. By process, you're now at voting. We talk about our goals. These are all pieces you know well. I'll start here and I'll make a couple highlights, and Dave will jump in as well. We've continued to review kind of our numbers, our look, and is our communication clear? We start with the fact that when we look at the fact that we have $1.1 million over the last 2 years of budgeting, FY21 and 22, that have not been restored. I noted that the 4 highlighted areas have seen restoration in partial approaches, and I'll reiterate those to you. The custodian was a deferred hiring, so that savings, allowed us savings in FY21 and has been restored in the sense that that is a hired position now. Some travel and training is back in FY22 because I anticipate by summer attending 1 or 2 of those conferences, the superintendent's conference that I attend, as well as then the November conference this year that I attended. The technology budget, we've cut over $150,000 over several years, the last 2 years in particular, and this budget request restored last year in FY22. We did restore $50,000 of that, and this FY23 budget, as well, takes a step forward with a $63,000 request, continuing to look for some restoration. All of these remaining, and I highlighted the paraeducator salary because we haven't added that position back in, but you do see sometimes additional paraeducators that come into budget through grants and other things, and I think it's just so important to articulate that we have new hires in paraeducators, not always pushing into the salary side of the budget, and that cut was one where we actually did some reconfiguring in 21 and then eliminated and consolidated several para positions. So I consider that still a position that has not been restored. When you look at that and you look at that 1.1 million, that over the last several years then, we've worked over those last 2 years to bring down budgets that were sitting up in the high 5% range down into the 4% range as the budget that we brought forward last year. One of the points that David and I made, and he actually ran the numbers on us, I wonder if you could talk about this, and again, it's people that, follow this, and again, I think it's important, if we had not cut that 1.1 million. This is similar to a point that Steve made at the close of the last meeting, that if that 1.1 had remained in our base and was available to us in 22, if we had not taken those cuts, our request this year would have been more of a, what would it have been?
About a 3.8. It would be about, actually, it is 3.8% increase. So the essentially the $1 million reduction over the last 2 years would have brought us down 2 percentage points for this year. So one of the aspects that Superintendent Bach and I were looking at was an approach to kind of rationalizing the number, because we realized it's big. So I think that's something to be upfront about. But again, with the cuts and then with the historic kind of agreed upon effort to get teachers' compensation to a level where they felt it was suitable and kind of matching our peer districts, it's kind of the perfect storm of not having a reduced budget, but having a large increase on 80% of your budget. And unfortunate for us, this is the budget that I'm inheriting, but this is the kind of the struggle that Superintendent Bach is trying to figure out how to manage it without actually, and pardon the expression, but cutting bone or just getting too lean on areas that historically have allowed us to make some student-centric pivots. And we're concerned about not having that flexibility going forward.
So I think tonight we just want to re-summarize that and make sure that we think about, we're not justifying the number, but understanding it, and those are different things. I think, again, we move forward very collaboratively with the town. We have a lot of good work ahead of us. I think it's important just for everybody to be on the same page of understanding. I know Christy did a very thorough and thoughtful presentation last night that you attended watching, and we'll talk more about that at the close of this presentation before I make closing remarks. We have either reduced or zero funded department budgets for several years. And you see those partial returns I talked about. In looking at 23, you see that technology restoration, that still leaves us, that would bring us up to, say, 110,000 of the 150 coming back into budget, but still not back to its original. The rest is rate increases for subs cost for extra days. That's in the salary line item. Contract changes of all of our increase, you'll see this in the final number, 132 of that's transportation, and then other small contract increases. And I think in talking about this, it's just very hard to absorb a $630,000 gap in the circuit breaker funding for what it's costing for us for tuitions, the escalation of cost rates, and then also some additional out-of-district placements really impacting us with a gap that just drops on top of our work without any options not to fund that. I think it's important to recognize that the budgeting of the school district can only turn in the downward direction. From the time you vote your budget, it could only get worse. It's not like they're gonna get additional revenue that it could improve. So, there's risk factors in that. Typically, the opportunity to do several months of prepay on tuition has given us opportunities to close gaps like that, and to make sure that in swings that are unanticipated, a student from out of district or an increase in tuitions unanticipated gives us some responsive flexibility. So seeing increases like this where we have gaps, like we currently have a gap this year that we're in that will utilize those tuition prepay dollars that we held to so we could make up for that. And we'll talk more about that between now and when we move to town meeting. And then, of course, you have a 4% salary increase. And I want to be clear that, you have continued and we have continued to bring forward very thoughtful contract budgets with our faculty, but this was the third year of the largest rollover with the 0.5 on the last day, and then the 3.5 into the year to finish the negotiated contract. Skip these. So you see that story kind of told here. You see the 600,000 dropping in there. You see the 63 in the technology that still leaves us short of the cuts made in technology over the last 2 years, and some differences in contracts. Those are contracted improvements in transportation. That's required contract rollover. That means really when you're looking at that of the operational budget, those are costs that can't be changed. We've talked about this. Those athletic needs are really contract for security details, referee, busing. It's really a minor amount of money, but in terms of just actual costs, they add up. Targeted technology needs, we've talked about. That's 63 that you see. I want to be clear that we had positions that we did not fund, and the only ones we brought forward were the ones we could do at no increase to the base salary and to the budget. We'll fund an additional athletic trainer support for our numerous athletes who are very busy to make sure that our trainer can be in multiple places at once. We'll use contracted services for that. And the social studies coordinator position, we will close the innovation position until we can be assured that a return to that implementation will be called out in a budget cycle when it's appropriate. Certainly not until FY24. I want to continue to look at the offsets that, allow us for management of budget. We draw the 200,000 on community ed. That that revolving account requires that we maintain at least $900,000 in that account, so that should tuitions close or should the program stop, that we would have an opportunity to fund it through a stretch before closing an account. Currently, we're pulling $200,000 from that. You know, for the ESSER funds, that of the $634,000, we're leveraging $341 for staffing supports of paraeducators to help manage the impacts of students really having been out of the classroom for over a year and a half. And you have kindergarten account, which is covering a good percentage of the positions. I think there's 12 on there. I'm sorry of the number. And we're leveraging $450,000 in that account. There's currently 600 in there, so we saved a small amount to allow us to roll into FY24 and not have to pull those positions in to the salary line item all at once. So when we did all that work, you know that the budget rollover was 6.15. I then went in and kind of made a strategic reduction. I think Dave's name for it is random cut, but I feel more strategic than that. Thank you. The final bringing in the 5.8%, and to do that, we did a couple things that were strategic that he helped design, which was, you know, pushing harder on that preschool revolving because it's a sustained revenue source. So that 70,000 and that 26,000 are ones that don't need to then flow back into the budget. It's a smart revenue change, and then we just have to monitor the impact of that on that tuition fund to make sure that it's sustainable. The other is a reduction of one tutor and one elementary position, you know, to be determined, and we maintain the opportunity to push that onto ESSER funds should we find we need it for a recovery into FY23, but for now we'll anticipate those two as cuts. So that brought us in at the budget that we presented to you. Again, like in rough numbers, when you're looking at that 3.3 million, you know, 2.7 of it.
I mean, yeah, of the 3.3 million, 2.7 of it is human capital. It's bodies, it's an investment in anything, whether it's curriculum instruction, substitutes, it's basically human capital. That's what that $2.7 million is. The 800,000 of operational change is essentially, when you break it down, 630 of it is our kind of unfortunate situation with circuit breaker and out of districts. So that is kind of a hard number. So if you take that out of the out of the 830, or essentially, and then you actually subtract transportation, which is kind of bargained for, we're essentially going in at an ask of $67,000. And this again is our request and our best foot forward based on the historic 2 past years of kind of reducing the budget by $1.1 million. I think it's important that we strategize, that we talked with our school leaders, our program directors, and said that, what can you do strategically, ensuring student, progression and growth, but at the same time managing at the same budget that you've historically had. And I think they've done a good job of managing that without asking for more. And again, just to highlight some of the things Amber said related to, this is the difficult year. This is coming out of a loss of $1.1 million on a 4% salary rollover. But again, we don't, in the future, foresee it. It's not a hypothetical. We hope contract negotiations will be a little less aggressive than 4%. Obviously, we want to compensate our teachers at the highest level that they can be, but at the same time, I think the strategy has kind of moved us in the right direction, and we can provide some benchmarking at some point to see where we are now. Just an asterisk on that, some of the DESE data and other district data is a little lagging because of COVID, so we'll get that as soon as you can. But related to that, I think we don't foresee such a large increase, and I think if in fact our diligence was to ever kind of make some more strategic offsets, it would be, extremely difficult from my point of view of saying, where are we going to be in a few years and how do we restore without losing that student-centric focus?
So, thank you. I think, Dave's insights on the trajectory of the work are kind of, fresh eyes on it, which is very, very helpful. I think it's important to recognize as well that, continue to have, ongoing discussions and collaboration on the town side. Christy and I spoke today. I had some questions around her presentation and the trajectory of her thinking. Kristen and I attend with Dave the town financial meeting monthly where we discuss, again, trajectory of what it looks like, the impacts on, with reevaluations and the press on increase in residential cost versus, the depression in the commercial rebound. And how early we budget, while we're still waiting for substantial numbers from the state and also the final projection on revenue that comes in. Really, we don't really know that when they set the tax rate until October, once all the commercial numbers are finalized. So, it's a complex process and it's hard for us to then look at those estimates and also then make smart decisions. So, again, there's tensions here, and I think that one of the things we talked about is our job is to make sure that we present to you what it takes to maintain the quality of service in the Westborough Public Schools to provide the public school education that has been provided in the town. We know another important part of that as we move forward is to also then in partnership look at the overall impact to the trajectory of the cost of what it takes to maintain all the municipal services in the community. I think that what's important for us to do tonight is to say, I think this budget represents what we need to maintain services. And I think we've shown you the areas that are pressing on us, that are not controllable. It's really unfortunate to see the gap in circuit breaker, but not, it's understandable given the status of the world with tuitions and costs and coverages. My best recommendation is that I believe that Dave and I feel strongly that you should approve this budget as presented, as it represents what it takes to maintain the district's services. And I think I want to be very clear that we all know that as a committee, I think you've strongly been in relationship with the town and with the select board and with FinCom to face the complexities of how our budgets mesh with the overall cost of living in the town. And I think I would say that we need to track through the January, the late January is the anticipated, I think it's end of January 27th, they're thinking of doing the summit, where we'll hopefully have the state funding rate. Right now, they've budgeted for it, I think Christy said at 1.5%. Last year, they got more than that, and it definitely helped to offset some of the deficit and allowed for some better numbers by town meeting than we anticipated when we were at this same place. I think Christy feels strongly that, waiting until we see that number is going to be helpful, and we hope that it would come in more advantageously. I think as well that it gives Dave and I time to look at providing analytics to you. We'll prep that to bring forward to the meeting. So I'm indicating that I believe we need to approve the standing budget as it's come forward and send it across the street, and be clear with them that we then move into the relationship-based discussion of looking at what are the numbers that will come to the total completion of the decisions that need to be made at town meeting. I would recommend not discussing any changes until you look at it and we understand where we are, and that we move forward with the town in process. I don't feel that I could have offered you anything differently tonight without a much more extensive amount of time to look at what cuts would look like. And I want to be clear that they would then have to be cuts. So, I mean, you can back out the 63,000 and the 5,000 for, contract costs in the athletic budget, and then you're basically going to start cutting. because it's all contract fulfillment at that point. So we're pushing on the revolvings at a high level. We've done the legwork. You've seen it in the presentation. So my recommendation to you stands, and we then move forward through the close of January, and you have meetings in February where I would say before the preparation of town meeting, you use that process. If you want to direct what we learn in all of those meetings to ask for a return, you could direct me to return at the February meeting and still have a cycle to look at what cuts would look like by your second February meeting. I mean, I think those would be my general thoughts so that we have time to be thoughtful about it. Otherwise, it's just going to be, random numbers, and we can't do that in good faith. So that's kind of the summary from me. You see our budget history, that over all the years, it's, even with this 5.8 request, it's been an average of under 4%. And we're pretty committed to staying in relationship with the town while being clear that we need to maintain the quality of schooling that people have moved to the community for. So that's my presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do agree that we need to watch this process closely. Watching the select board meeting last night, the town manager is projecting a tough year coming up in terms of budgeting and different pressures and friction that's going to come into play in setting tax rates and being able to budget. So I encourage anyone who is watching or listening right now to watch the recording of the select board meeting last night, where town manager Christy Williams kind of forecast her thoughts on some upcoming impacts to town budgets due to the reevaluation of residential properties. So something that I think that's really important to share with everyone, that our school budget and what we're showing you is all in. It's everything. It's every cost. It's every gap that we need to fill. It's every contract. It's everything. And I think right now the town budget does not show every budget driver that they have just yet, because they have contracts to settle and they're able to show their budget a little differently. So it's not right now an apples to apples comparison, because the town budget isn't a comprehensive picture of everything, whereas the school budget is. And so I agree with what you're saying, Superintendent Bach, about watching the process closely and going to that town budget summit to be able to hear more updated information. I would recommend that we have 2 school committee meetings in February. And so I would just like to set a benchmark date with you and Dave for February 16th meeting, for you to come forward at that meeting to share, the benchmark data with our comparable towns, so that we can see, what's driving the budgets in those towns. And we often look at them when we are going to bring forward a number to see. Unfortunately, it's hard because we go first. Most towns budget into May. Their town meetings are May, so they get to look to us. But we can look at what they had last year and kind of see where they're headed this year. And also, between now and then, it gives you time to leverage more offsets or look to see if there's anything else that can be done with the number. But I understand what you're saying, that this is our base. Even though it's a high number, it is our base budget that we're bringing forward. And I thought it was fascinating, Dave, for you to hear that we're really only asking for $6,000 or $7,000 above what we actually need to run the district. So if you agree with that, I think if you just set that mark for February 16th.
Yeah, 2 things. I imagine we'll do the analytics as part of our updates across the trajectory of the summit in January. And and I think that what we would have to start to develop, I think one of the important pieces, and you guys have done a very good job with this, and I think your point that, and I think Christy's been very transparent about this, that one of the pressures she's concerned about is that they have several contracts that they will then have to settle. I would imagine if they're not done by town meeting, they might be able to amend some of their requests actively by town meeting, or they would need to come in the fall, assuming that they could, to the October town meeting. So I think they're facing a clear reality that they have additional costs that would come forward. And so I think I applaud their transparency in that. I think our number is the all-in number because we're in year 3 of our contract. So I think all the players are keeping everything on the table, which feels very, very important. I do think that, we're going to have to back up some of that work to the first February meeting, and we will have left the summit at the end of January. So maybe timetable-wise, we would then be able to debrief that meeting.
Yes.
And I think the important thing that we're all going to have to figure out are what are the reasonable targets as the numbers develop more. Like by then, hopefully, we'll get a more advantageous Chapter 70 on their side of the money, and that would help, and then a couple other pieces of hopefully good news would allow us to come in at a better discussion of what would need to be reduced on both sides in order to come into town meeting so that our voters know that we take that responsibility very seriously, every tax dollar we put on them.
Absolutely. And, and I do want to reiterate that we do continue to work in collaboration with the select board and the town manager and our advisory finance committee, who always have great guidance and advice for us. And I do look forward to that budget summit. We have a lot to decide for our town. It's really, really important. And, I definitely, in watching the select board meeting, saw that atmosphere of collaboration and the way that we are going to work together to bring forward, what we can for our town. So I did really appreciate that.
The only thing I just wanted to highlight was the date. I'm just a little concerned. What you highlighted was the timing with the other districts and how they go, in front of their town vote or whatnot in March.
Yep.
So I'm just concerned about, just the level of quality information that I'd be getting you, as opposed to hearsay versus something that they actually want to provide us when it hasn't been voted on. And they'll always have opportunities to change and how willing they are to share information at that point. So I just don't want to give you kind of an apples scenario of us being, we know where we're at, and then you get a whole bunch of oranges.
Sure.
Which makes, which kind of make your assessment of the data kind of more difficult and challenging. So we will start doing our kind of assessment and an analysis of districts and what they'll be willing to share and things like that. I just want to be upfront that I just don't want to make it a more challenging conversation for us to say, well, hypothetically, they could land at. I mean, that's the thing that I've noticed about a lot of the conversations, respectfully saying so, that I don't want to build a next step for us on a hypothetical. I prefer to have some.
And it's not to say that we're going to do what other towns do.
Yes,
There's so
exactly.
many unique drivers that, in different areas. But I think, even if you look at what we have voted in historically and the past 2 December meetings just like this, and what we brought forward to town meeting, were 2 very different numbers.
Absolutely.
So I understand that what we're voting might not be the number that shows up on town meeting floor, and that's the same in many other towns as well. Yeah, thank you. So other questions or comments from the committee?
Can I just ask a detail one versus the overarching? I don't know how I missed this question in the past, but it's about total operating and maintenance. We don't have a slide for that, and I'm curious about the details of that increase. I don't know how I missed it last time, because I love this slide, because I think it's, it gives us a really good view of exactly what the percentage increase is. The 8.84%, what do you attribute the increase to versus the flat line, You remember, and it's okay, because I feel like I did not, ask it in the past, and we're sort of we're at a
I think that's just the
post point.
compilation of those.
Yeah, that's
It's a compilation.
Yeah, it's a compilation of those,
Yeah.
the circuit breaker and the.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that,
Oh, okay.
these add up to that.
Threw it up there.
Yeah, okay.
We say it rolls up.
It rolls up, not rolls down. I probably assumed that in the last meeting, but I was
Yeah, it's
like, how come I missed that? Because it rolled up. But thank you. Thank you for, okay. I see how that happened.
That's not a surprise.
It's the
8%.
consolidation, it's really the consolidation of
It's
the
the
increases we
consolidation of
see
those
in the
impacts, right.
white
Yep.
into an
Yep.
8.84%. Okay. So that was just a detail
Okay, great.
question. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Steve?
I'm thinking that this discussion really is quite a bit different than the way the town is supposed to be operating. We have a requirement in the charter that in fact our budget goes to the Board of Selectmen, and it was discussed yesterday that in fact the meeting yesterday was it. So obviously we haven't voted on this budget yet. And the idea that our purpose here as a member of the school committee is to analyze what's needed for our schools, create the budget based on that, and be able to stand our ground at town meeting and make that recommendation. So the idea that some other town is doing whatever they're doing has nothing to do with our process and what the charter requires the school committee to do. Second piece of the story is that if this is the budget that's required to run the schools based on our understanding of the needs, then this is the budget that we would then stand by and present to town meeting. So the changes that would reduce the percentage increase would be the fact that we get more money from the state for whatever purpose it might be, whether it's circuit breaker, whether it's additional grants, whatever it is. I would still think that the school committee would stand by our needs, and the impact on the town would be reduced by virtue of whatever additional monies come to us from the state. So the only other thing we can do is as a school committee, as the town completes its process, as we get recommendations from the Finance Committee, from the Board of Selectmen, ultimately then we reconsider what we eventually will put in our budget and what will show up in the budget at town meeting. And I think those are the only parameters that we as a school committee can do. In this discussion about when money, or when the state would tell us what additional money we're going to get, which apparently is towards the end of January, maybe early February, it doesn't change, in my mind, the fact that we are deciding, and we have been listening to a budget presentation month over month that tells us how we structured this budget based on what our needs are. And that's the bottom line. Consistent with what the charter requires us to do, which is to have a budget voted by the school committee at this time of the year, irrespective of what other things come to us over the next few months. And that's the way it's been, and that's the way it's been for as long as I've been in town and participating in town government. And so this discussion that some kind of manna from heaven is going to happen, and that somehow or another we're going to reduce the impact of this budget on the taxpayers, I guess I would call it wishful thinking. If this is what we think we need as a school committee and we vote it, we should vote it tonight, and that's what we stand by. And we go forward with that, and we do our best. If the town asks us to do something in terms of what we think our need is, based on other parameters, and there were some pretty surprising numbers that were discussed last night before the Board of Selectmen, particularly from the town assessor, which means, in my opinion, they're going to come back and ask the schools to do more, to take, if you will, to have less of a program, perhaps, than what we've included in here. And so I think those are real facts for this discussion tonight. And given the effort that we have now put into the budget, that Amber has reviewed and made some changes from the beginning of this process, so it's a little more palatable than it might have been. I think that's the question on the table. Do we vote this number or don't we? And do we do it tonight or do we wait? So I guess that summarized where my thinking is right now.
I think we can't wait because we have to give the number to the town, right? To the,
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I think we can't wait because we have to give a number.
Yeah.
We have to submit to.
I mean, if we're going to do our job according to the charter, tonight's the night.
Yep.
I mean, we've been put in a pretty tough situation. I mean, it was so shocking to listen last night, knowing that we've been talking about our budget for months.
October.
And, when I look out and I see, 7 students sitting in front of us, and I think about all we've talked about in terms of supporting our 3,900 students and our teachers and staff in so many ways, because you guys have had so much loss, and all we've been talking about is how to not just, maintain a good program, but save it and fill in and make sure that you get the supports you need And we've talked a lot about mental health, making sure you get supports that you need, academic support for any gaps that have existed from the last 2 years. I mean, I think that what we've been talking about is that this looks like a very lean budget to us. I mean, you may see a very, from an economic point of view, you see a very high percentage. But what we see is a lean budget because we've cut and cut and cut in the last 2 years. And the way I've always looked at it is you deserve to have the programming that has been put in place and not to cut anymore. And we know that a lot of the cuts have not been brought back. We're still in that deficit in some ways. And, the whole talk about low class size, small class sizes is extraordinarily important to maintain some degree of opportunities that our students have at the high school and middle school, and, clubs and engaging in life again, and being able to teach more effectively in a smaller class environment so that you can reach the needs of anyone who has had such loss. And I look out at all of you and I know that loss has happened, and that's what the fight is for this budget. It's to make sure that we fill in. And, if you're here for, is it microeconomics? Is this a class? Macroeconomics. It is about what is the value of the money? What is the value for each of you? What is the value for our teachers? And so I get it, as a community member and as a team player in the town, there may come a moment where we have to evaluate, but at this point, where we've been reviewing it for 4 months, feels, it would be insincere I think, for us not to pass what we currently have. That's not to say in a month or two, when we see what the real financial situation is, that we wouldn't become part of the team player. And that will feel, in some ways, unfortunate because as you said, what are we charged to do but to give you guys the educational opportunities that are in Westborough, and to support our teachers at the same time with the resources they need to support our students.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think 23 is actually going to end up being a huge recovery year for everyone, and keeping more students in front of faculty and smaller class sizes, and as being part of the contract negotiations. That was years ago, but it feels even more important now that value that we added into the contract for our staff is coming to fruition. We did comparables back then. Like I said, it feels like years ago, but that was a strategic move we made to put value into our faculty, and obviously we value our students. So I'd make a motion to support this budget as submitted.
Yeah. Just a few comments. I totally agree with Lisa and the rest of my colleagues here. Emotionally, it's true that we need to keep offering the best possible services to the students and teachers, and have a viable community. But let me also talk about economics of it. Mm-hmm. A good school system makes us a desirable community for a viable community, where our real estate valuations would be high. People want to come and be part of our community. People move in, and there's economics to it as well. And people move into Westborough partly and majorly because of good school systems we have. So we cannot be penny-wise, pound-foolish in this. We need to make sure that the schools are properly funded so that we can keep the high standards that the community expects us to do. And, we can't really afford to lose good school system that we have. So for that, I totally support the budget as presented.
And I do believe that this budget represents what we need to maintain the quality of service that we've continued to offer in the past, and so that we can carry that forward. So I would like to make a motion to approve the FY23 budget as presented.
You actually get to second
You get to
Sarah.
second,
I
'cause
think
I
she already
jumped- I
beat you
jumped
to
ahead.
it.
You already motioned?
Yeah.
She did, she got in there, she definitely did.
Oh,
I got lost in
you.
myself. No, she can have it. I'll
Was it like a real motion? It was a real motion. I second your motion. Is there any further discussion?
I'm sure there will be, but not right now.
I'm sure there's plenty of discussion to be had, but not right now. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that's 5-0, approving this budget as, FY23 budget as presented. Thank you for all your hard work on that, and this is just the beginning of the first phase of hard work in budgeting. And I appreciate what you've done to bring us to this point, and just the thoughtfulness and the clarity of describing why we're here and where all these numbers come from. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
So I put here for a point of information for you. I don't think that we need to present it to you tonight, but I added back in the capital presentation that we did that carries the FY23 capital requests. And I think that that is moving through process as well, and it becomes part of the total, obviously, budgeting process in terms of warrant articles. That would be a borrow versus a use of free cash or other funding sources. So currently, I think, and again, Steve is on that committee, and they are currently reviewing them, and I think that they will be strategically looking to make requests as one of the things that they do would be to push some of the timelines off an additional year. So I think we should wait for the recommendations that come out of that process. We have several large ticket items in there. In particular, it's the Hastings roof project, which I think is hugely overestimated right now, given the cost of what it's taking to do construction work, and I don't think Steve would disagree. If you look at the cycle at which we've pulled other projects and rebid them later and gotten much more advantageous bids, which he did strategically with the sprinkler system and brought us in at a much better number at the town side. So I think at this point, you'll see a recommendation coming out of the capital committee to push that one year down the road. And then I think they're going to wait and see what the trajectory of the ARPA funding is. So there's large money on the table in those capital projects, and that would impact the capacity they have. If one of the processes that comes forward is to leverage some of free cash to manage the offset of this particularly tough tax year, then they might defer other expenditures, and we can be players in that in terms of working forward with the town. The roof project would be a borrow, but like we have the freezer project in there at 40,000 that we could pull back in-house. And I think, again, we need to be thoughtful about what basically is going to hit on the overall free cash impact if it becomes a player in one of the discussions for the offsets of the tax impact. So just things to think about. I don't think we need to go through those tonight. We have other things to cover. And I think I just want to highlight it to you. You can look at it. You can send me questions. I just think that we will remain active partners at the table for that discussion.
Especially with the inflated prices for construction material due to supply chain issues and the construction costs itself being inflated. If we can push it for one more year till the prices stabilize and come down.
Yeah, it's going to be it will be an active discussion, and they did ask, that we remain open to that, and I talked to Kim Foster just to indicate that, we've got a good voice at the table, and it'll have an authentic process, and it would come back to us, by the time we get at town meeting, there would be those items that would be part of our discussion as well. And so I think I probably will bring that back to you in January when we can reflect on that a little bit more, prior to heading into the summit. Okay?
Yep, yeah,
All
just
right.
another piece
That's
of
it for tonight on that one, yeah.
So the big picture. Okay, thank you.
Part of the decision-making on that had to do with what the results of the design was going to be for the Hastings HVAC. As was discussed for the high school and the HVAC issues associated with air conditioning in the auditorium was the impact of that design on the roof. And so there really wasn't a good answer for, what was included and what wasn't included in the HVAC design, and it gave us more time to review that and make sure that there is an understanding of what happens to the roof as that project goes forward. So it really wasn't so much that the Capital Expenditures Committee didn't support it. They just wanted more information to know what the cost impact of that question would be.
Yeah, it's good that we have Steve at the table for that content. And I think we did a good job in preparing updated, solid documents to forward to them. I think we did a much better capital process this year as it's continued to evolve. Are you ready to move to the next item?
Yeah, just a couple of housekeeping items here. One of the next agenda items is a review and a renewal of our medication policy.
Yeah, it's a fairly, again, housekeeping item for you. There's one typo here, one error that we've got to double in this here that we will take out. But it basically updates the year to the policy. It looks at the standard procedures we use for the administering of medications for trips and other things, and then what the protocols are. And Judy has reviewed this. Judy Noonan, the head nurse, sees it as a strong policy that works effectively for us. They do a very, very good job to manage this, and I would recommend that you approve it as presented.
So move.
Second?
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor to approve?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposition? All right, that's approved. Thank you for bringing that forward, and thank you to our nurse leader for looking that over and just double checking that policy for us. And we also need to vote to accept a donation to the Borough program.
Sure. I'm going to read to make sure I articulate it correctly. And this is from Erin over at the Sugar Shack in the Borough program. This is a large donation of $10,000. And Erin writes, it is an anonymous donation. It is to replenish the donation from the family for their seed money to the Sugar Shack for student payroll funds, similar to what was done last year. The fund was started to allow students to be paid for their work in the store after school and on Saturdays while the store continues to increase its revenue. She noted that, the ultimate goal is for the borough and the revenues there to operationally be sufficient, but this donation goes a long way, so we wanted to do our diligence, present it to you, and hopefully you accept it. And the Sugar Shack can continue working with the students and providing good treats to Westborough.
Yeah, that's a great project for the economics class. That is such an interesting project because, it's an innovation project, and it's basically, a new business where trying to get to that profit margin and the cost impacts. We've made tremendous progress, having a very good year thus far. And we regularly have a standing set of student employees that are working in the store now. And so it just allowed us a faster trajectory to fulfill that target goal, which was just an important one to the kind of the robust nature of the program. Paying those students it really feels like, well, we needed them. We need them to work those hours. So it's basically filling a gap while we have another year to kind of develop that profitability margin. I feel very good. And in the spring, Sherry and I plan to give you a more targeted kind of financial set of updates and some new planning goals that are part of the strategic plan you'll see when you get it back.
You remind me that it really would be an opportunity for consultants of students.
I know, I have a plan that I wanted to do
problems.
like an independent AP to do our books, wouldn't that say, that's a good independent AP project, to have someone do the
review a
accounting on our books.
You could review a problem
Yeah.
that the class would have to solve the problem in a presentation to the borough leadership.
No, it's a great innovation site that we're beginning to see the impacts of, so it's good.
So I'll move that the school committee accept the gift of $10,000 on behalf of the Borough program, and that we provide a letter of gratitude for the gift.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion?
Thank the anonymous
thank you.
donor
Yes,
for the
thank you so
generous
much.
gift. That's
Very,
really
very generous, and we appreciate
great.
the support of this program. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, that's 5-0. We'll accept that, and thank you again to that anonymous donor. We're going to move into an executive session, but before we do that, I'd just like to wish everyone a restful vacation break and a happy new year, and let you know that the next meeting of the school committee will be Wednesday, January 5th, 2022. So I have the motion in front of me. Do you want me to just make it?
I have it, yeah.
You want to do it, Sarah?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
I don't care. We haven't done this in so long, I forgot.
I know.
I vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining teacher's contract, and under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 22, G2, Purpose 7, to review and approve executive session minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
You. We have to do a roll call vote.
Yep, Dulé, yes.
Nandan, yes?
Edinburgh, yes?
Durant, yes.
And Vincent, yes. So we are now in an executive session. So I would invite everyone now to exit the room unless you've been invited to attend this executive session, and we'll just take